Haribo, Namaste, Krishna. Thank you for watching, if you're watching tonight live, or if you're watching the YouTube. Krishna. Om Vishnu Padaya Shambhastaya Bhutale Shrimate Sira Sarupananda Pamanusuti Namine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Shambhastaya Bhutale Shrimate Sira Sarupananda Pamanusuti Namine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Vishapastaya Bhutale Shrimate Sira Sarupananda Pamanusuti Namine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Vishapastaya Bhutale Shrimate Sira Sarupananda Pamanusuti Namine Namo Sira Sarupananda Pamanusuti Namine Korakarana Sarupaya Parakishina Prastayate Namo Sira Sarupananda Pamanusuti Korakarana Sarupaya Parakishina Prastayate Namo Sira Sarupananda Pamanusuti Korakarana Sarupaya Parakishina Prastayate Namaste Saraswati Deva Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Sunyavadi Askachari Satarine Namaste Saraswati Deva Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Sunyavadi Askachari Satarine Namaste Saraswati Deva Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Sunyavadi Bhaskachari Satarine Ajashi Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Radharani Shri Asariko Bhaktivinoda Ajashi Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Radharani Sariko Bhaktivinoda Ajashi Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shri Asariko Bhaktivinoda Ajashi Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Sariko Bhaktivinoda Ajashi Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shri Asariko Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Nityananda, Gauranga, Gauranga, Nityananda, Nityananda, Gauranga, Gauranga, Nityananda, Nityananda, Gauranga, Gauranga, Radha Krishna, Vrindavan, 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 Jaya Jaya Srila Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Gurudev, Jaya Jaya Srila Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Gurudev, Jaya Jaya Srila Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Gurudev, Jaya Jaya Srila Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Gurudev. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Parvadika Satar Sata Shishimad Jagakuru Siddhaswarupananda Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Parvadika Satar Sata Shishimad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koda Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Nitai Gaur's World Mission Ki Jai. Navadvita Dhamma Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gaur Gopinath Shamakun Radhakun Kira Govardhana Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Mathura Dham Ki Jai. Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Jamuna Mai Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Gaura Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol. For speaking, first to offer my humble obeisances of the lotus feet of my spiritual master, Jagakuru Siddhaswarupananda Srila Prabhupada, who is very dear to Lord Krishna, having taken shelter at his lotus feet. Srila Prabhupada is the mercy manifestation of Lord Chaitanya, is very dear to Radha and Krishna. I offer my respectful obeisances to all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord, who are like wish-fulfilling trees, able to fulfill all the desires of the fallen living entities, and are full of compassion upon them. Haribol, Namaste. Shri Krishna. So, tonight we're continuing with Bhagavad Gita. Last week I kind of gave an unintended summary and overview of how we got to where we're up to here in chapter 5. We're in chapter 5 of Bhagavad Gita. And this is in the section of Bhagavad Gita, like sometimes Bhagavad Gita is sometimes or often divided into three sections. And of course there's a bit of different or similar content throughout the Bhagavad Gita, but generally it's divided into three sections, chapters 1 to 6, and this is about primarily about Karma Yoga. Chapters 7 to 12 is about bhakti, about the nature of God or the Supreme Person, Krishna, and of devotional service to Him. And then the third section of Bhagavad Gita, chapters 13 to 18, is often described as being about Sankhya or Jnana Yoga. Of course, this is, in each part of Bhagavad Gita, each of these three sections, there's some bhakti and there's some jnana and there's some karma. But primarily the topics are like divided like that. And so in chapter 5 is very much about Karma Yoga. Chapter 1 is like a description of Arjuna's lamentation. Chapter 2 is Krishna's sort of responding to Arjuna's lamentation and then beginning to speak about the distinction between, that we're not the body, so the distinction between the body and the soul. And then Krishna begins speaking about Buddha Yoga or Karma Yoga. And chapter 3, Krishna goes into quite some depth about Karma Yoga, speaking about the glories of Karma Yoga. Chapter 4, at the beginning, there's a bit of a discussion about Krishna's descent as the Avatara. And this is almost like a digression, comes up incidentally almost as a result of a question by Arjuna. But then once Krishna's finished speaking about that, then returns to the topic of Karma Yoga and some Jnana Yoga, describing different types of Karma Yoga, different aspects of Karma Yoga, and then at the end of the chapter is describing the glories of transcendental knowledge or jnana. And chapter 5 then again returns to this discussion of Karma Yoga. So of course, what is yoga? Of course, means to link up or achieve union with the Supreme, and ultimately with the Supreme Person. So Shri Krishna, Bhagavan Shri Krishna. Yoga generally entails sacrifice, some kind of, taking on of austerity, but this sacrifice is as an offering to the Supreme. In other words, I'm doing what I'm doing as an offering to the Supreme. And ultimately, from the Vaishnava's point of view, this sacrifice or offering is an offering to Krishna, and being made out of love, bhakti, love for Krishna. So, the Vaishnava, the devotee, sees everything, sees their whole life as an offering to their spiritual master and Krishna, their spiritual master being non-different from Krishna in the sense that he's the pure representative of Krishna, the ambassador of Krishna in this material world. He's present here trying to call me back home, back to Krishna. This is an essential characteristic of all types of yoga, is sacrifice, offering. And another characteristic is equanimity and samatvam, equanimity, seeing equally, being equal in happiness and distress, so undisturbed. So equanimity. So there's seeing people equal, seeing all souls equally, regardless of the external form of the body, and being in equanimity, equal in happiness or distress. And so this is an essential characteristic of yoga. And a third is, renunciation or tyaga, giving up. So this is non-attachment to the results. And this non-attachment to the results is the particular characteristic of karma yoga. And, action yoga, karma meaning action. Yoga, linking up with the Supreme. So this karma yoga is about linking up with the Supreme through action. And we described last week at some depth, that this, generally speaking, karma yoga is referring to following one's varnashram, ashram duties. So this sense of duty or obligation, responsibility, according to one's status in life, according to one's varna. And as I described last week, the varna system is established by Krishna himself, and also one's ashrama, one's spiritual status in life, either brahmachari or grihastha, householder, so brahmachari, student, celibate student, grihastha, householder, vanaprastha, retired life, sannyas, actual renunciation, which was really, then Vedic society is just for a small number of people. Generally speaking, only brahmanas, the priests and or the priestly varna, and the intellectuals. So anyway, that's kind of a bit of a bit of an overview of Bhagavad Gita and of these first 5 chapters. So when chapter 5 begins with Arjuna being a bit confused, in chapter 4 Krishna's been speaking about the glories of transcendental knowledge, how wonderful transcendental knowledge is, and he also described karma yoga as in terms of attachment and that, or action in inaction and inaction in action. And so I recall, I think I discussed that a little bit last week, but so I won't go into it again. But as a result of what Krishna described about this action in inaction and inaction in action, and then describing the glories of transcendental knowledge, then Arjuna became kind of confused, because again Arjuna is tending to think of someone who's absorbed in transcendental knowledge as somebody who's like a meditator. They're meditating, they're reading scripture all day, or not all day, but anyway, generally reading scripture and engaging in meditation and spiritual practices. And of course, as we know, Arjuna was kind of attracted to this idea. At the start of Bhagavad Gita, he's more or less telling Krishna, I want to go and, I want to go off and renounce the world, become a renunciate, and live in a cave, more or less, and just engage in spiritual practices. And this is a bit like sometimes devotees have this feeling, or people in general have the feeling or belief that spiritual life means inaction, not doing much, just sort of leading a contemplative life, engaged in meditation and study and so on. And this kind of goes along with the idea that they kind of don't really know what goes on in heaven, right? What goes on in heaven? They're kind of like, I'm not sure I want to go to heaven. I don't know what's going on there, Or, and this is connected to the idea also, people generally have a conception of spiritual life or absolute truth as being void of characteristics or void of activity. This is the Buddhist idea, nirvana, the snuffing out of material life, and this means a void, nothing. or that's the Buddhist concept, sunyavadi, sunya, zero, or the Mayavadis, they're of the view that we all become one with the Supreme. In other words, we lose our individual identity and merge into the Brahman. And so again, inactivity. In either case, either the Buddhist Sunyavadis or the Mayavadis, it's a ceasing to exist as an individual and no longer being active. This is kind of the general concept of spiritual life that people have, that it's inactivity. So of course we bring this along to devotional service when we begin chanting Hare Krishna, or if one is not grown up in a family of devotees, then one can bring these misconceptions with them. You can have these misconceptions, of course, if you're born in a family of devotees. But anyway, we can bring these misconceptions to spiritual life, and we become bhakti yoga or engaging in devotional service, and we can begin to think, well, I would just like to chant japa for many hours a day, and I'd like to read scripture many hours of a day, and I don't really want to work and be active. If I go to work and I'm active, I'm dealing in the world, we may feel I'm getting contaminated. I'm being, caught up in the modes of passion or ignorance, and I just don't want to do this. I just want to be more in the mode of goodness, and and of course the mode of goodness is a takeoff point for more spiritual activity. So being in the mode of goodness is good, but one should generally, during the day we need to get a little bit passionate. In the sense of engaging in activity, practical devotional service. Ultimately, there's no difference between practical devotional service and sitting down and reading or chanting japa, right? Providing we have, like the practices of sadhana bhakti, devotional service in practice, the hearing and the chanting and the remembering and the serving the lotus feet of the deities or the spiritual master, engaging in these spiritual practices, these help us develop the correct mood or mentality, the understanding that I am, and study of scripture, right? It leads to this, and hearing from our spiritual master, of course, most importantly, hearing the words of the spiritual master, of Srila Prabhupada, entering through our ears and taking it within our heart and contemplating upon it. His words and his chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra. So these spiritual activities, they purify our hearts and minds and put us into a consciousness of understanding my actual identity, aham brahmasmi, as being spiritual in essence, not the Supreme Spirit, and my function is to engage in service. In other words, Prabhupada's brilliant analysis of the science of identity. Right? So this is the purpose of sadhana bhakti, to get us into that mentality. So then, throughout the day, then we're active, or in the night, whatever. But anyway, we're active, engaging in service to our spiritual master. So in this material world, externally, we are serving our spiritual master with these gross physical bodies and with our subtle material body, the mind and intelligence. And so externally, we're active. And this is karma yoga. But when karma yoga is infused with the idea of doing it out of love for Krishna and my spiritual master, then it becomes bhakti yoga. So bhakti yoga includes karma yoga in this sense. It's kind of like karma yoga has like a continuum, right, that goes from just the performance of ashram duties over on the left hand, then on the right hand is having pure love for Krishna and performing activities with our gross physical body and subtle material body for the pleasure of Krishna. So in either case, it's karma yoga. In that sense, the physical activities is karma yoga, but there's a different mood or mentality of it, or like a spectrum. And so anyway, so this is, so spiritual life is actual activity. What I was going to say, so this is like on the external level. On the internal level, a devotee should be developing their love for Radha and Krishna and their pastimes in Vrindavan. We can be contemplating upon Krishna's pastimes in this way, what's known as the Astakaliya Leela pastimes, the eightfold pastimes of Krishna, Radha and Krishna, as they unfold during the day. Now, of course, one has to be free of mundane sex desire before one can actually contemplate Radha Krishna's pastimes in this way. So the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra is the purification of our hearts and minds that will bring us to this higher platform, will free us from this desire for mundane sex enjoyment. So anyway, sort of bringing this back to where we're at in Bhagavad Gita and Arjuna, Arjuna has this sense that he doesn't want to be active, and that's been describing here. This is a common perception within people in general, and spiritualists in particular, and even new devotees can be thinking that, I just want to, chant all day or chant japa all day, not be active. And so Arjuna is thinking like this, especially after hearing Krishna talk about action and inaction and inaction and action and the glories of transcendental knowledge, and then he's kind of a bit confused. So anyway, this is the beginning of chapter 5. So Arjuna basically asks Krishna, tell him which is better, work or renunciation of work. In other words, is karma yoga or tyaga, which is better? And Krishna clearly says karma yoga is better than renunciation or sannyasa of work. So and so why is it better? It's because it's it's a more secure platform. Krishna described at length in chapter 3, what a pretender is. One who's sitting down chanting on their beads and being inactive, but within their mind they're just thinking about sense enjoyment. So this is a pretender. So we don't want to be pretenders, hypocrites, false spiritualists, trying to look spiritual, trying to act spiritual, trying to impress people, to think that I'm a great devotee. Look at me. I'm so serious about chanting on my beads and whatever I'm doing, but I'm engaging in these actions not out of love for my spiritual master and Krishna, but there's mixed motive there. There may be some desire to be pleasing. There may be some desire to follow the instructions. Of course, the mixed motive may also include a desire for mukti or liberation. I'm wanting to get liberated. I'm wanting to get free of this material world, this material body, and all the hassles that go with it, and all the pain that comes along with it, pain and suffering and misery. I want to get free. So anyway, Krishna says karma yoga is better. It's a more solid platform. Just engage in activities and Yavanashram duties and perform these, and this is purifying, and this will elevate you in spiritual life. And ultimately, Krishna's saying it'll lead to liberation or mukti. Brahman Nirvanam, which Krishna says 4 times in this, uses this term, or 3 times, the words Brahman Nirvanam. So liberation in the Supreme, in Brahma, in the Brahman. So, of course, this means one thing to a devotee, means something else to a impersonalist. But in any case, Krishna is saying that's the best path. Then he goes on to describe further how we should be engaging in this, and what the working without attachment, this karma yoga idea, this working without attachment to the results. So leading up to this section where we're now up to, it's like the fourth main theme. So within this chapter 5, there's various themes, and the first theme is work and devotion is better than renunciation of work. Then working without attachment, and the three doers, who's actually the doer. And then this fourth section is, Krishna is talking about liberation, or being fixed in the Supreme, in the Brahman, in Brahma. So, this kind of section begins, or the previous section ended with text 16. When, however, one is enlightened with the knowledge by which nescience is destroyed, then his knowledge reveals everything, as the sun lights up everything in the daytime. So this is the glory of transcendental knowledge. What we receive from our spiritual master in Krishna is this. There's the prayer. Amagina Timarandasya Gina Gina Shilakaya Chaksurun Militanyena Tajmai Shri Guruve Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance. My spiritual master opened my eyes with the torchlight of transcendental knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. So as we're in the darkest of ignorance, we don't know what's what. We've got, someone who doesn't have spiritual realization or knowledge has no idea what is going on in this world, what life is about, who they are, what the purpose of life is, why are they suffering. They have no understanding or idea, and as a result, they pursue temporary goals. These temporary goals are the ultimate. And, in the passage of time, death comes. And they again take birth. So they're in the wheel of samsara, birth and death. But one who has knowledge actually sees things as they are, and then knows the purpose of life, and begins to take to spiritual practices, the spiritual path. This is the first sutra, the Vedanta Sutra, is Athato Brahma Jignasa. Athato, now. Now is the time, right? Athato, now. So now is the time. Brahma Jignasa. Jignasa means inquiry. Brahma is the absolute truth. Now is the time to inquire into the absolute truth. So this is like the beginning of the Vedanta Sutra, but this is the beginning of a spiritual life. When someone comes to this point where they're experiencing, perhaps experiencing the misery of this material world, or the emptiness of it, or their lack of satisfaction, and wondering, why is there death? Why is there birth? What is birth? What is death? Why is there old age? Why is there disease? Why is there suffering? Why is there crime? Right? They're wondering why all these things. So this becomes the beginning of spiritual life, this Athato Brahma Jignasa, inquiry into what is the goal of life, what is the purpose of life. So that's where it begins from, and then inquiring from the appropriate person, the bona fide spiritual master, then one receives the answer, like Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita chapter 4, text 34, Tadvidi pranipatena, Pariprajnena sevaya, upadekshanti te jnanam, jnaninastava. So one must inquire from a bona fide spiritual master, a tattva dashinaha, one who's seen the truth, one who knows the truth. Such a person can initiate you, upadekshanti, into knowledge. Upadekshanti te jnanam. They can initiate you or give you transcendental knowledge. And why is this? Because they have seen the truth. So this transcendental knowledge that the Tattva Dashinaha, or the bona fide spiritual master, gives us is like is enlightenment. It's like, you're in, given the example, you're in a dark room and it's pitch black, you can't see anything, someone turns on the light, a bright light, suddenly you can see everything. So this is the analogy Krishna is giving, is like as the sun lights up everything in the daytime, the darkness at night, you can't see stuff outside. You can't see, you don't know what's going on. And then when the sun comes up, all of a sudden you can see. So this is this is the incredibly important to understand, to realize the power and the importance of transcendental knowledge. It destroys nescience or ignorance. Then this knowledge, this transcendental knowledge, this knowledge of the soul, essentially Krishna is talking here about Atma Tattva, the truth of the soul, realizing our actual identity as spirit soul. This is enlightening. So then coming to this section we're up to, so in text 17, then Krishna said, when one's intelligence, mind, faith and refuge are all fixed in the Supreme, then one becomes fully cleansed of misgivings through complete knowledge, and thus proceeds straight on the path of liberation. Then Krishna begins to describe some characteristics of this knowledge, this liberating knowledge. The humble sage, this is text 18, which was the last verse we studied. The humble sage, the Pandit, by virtue of true knowledge, sees with equal vision a learned and gentle Brahmana, a cow, an elephant, a dog, and a dog-eater, an outcast. So that with this true knowledge, this transcendental knowledge that's like, destroys nescience, and it's like the sun lighting up the darkness or destroying the darkness. So the one aspect of this true knowledge is seeing with equal vision. So Vidya Vinaya Sampani Brahmani Gavihastini Suni Chaiva Swapakecha Pandita Samadashinaha. So the Pandit is text 18. So the Pandit sees with equal vision, Samadashinaha, Panditaha, Pandita Samadashinaha. So the Pandit, or the learned person, sees with equal vision. And what is he seeing with equal vision? By virtue of true knowledge, he's seeing a learned and gentle Brahmana and a dog eater. So there's two types of people at the high end of the Varnas, the Brahmana, the Pandit, the priests and the intellectual class, those who are absorbed in study of scripture and so on. So he sees a Brahmana as being equal to an outcast or a dog eater, a swapake, one who eats dogs. It's kind of like as low as it goes. Right? So he's seeing those as being equal, but not only seeing different types of people as being equal, but also seeing animals. A cow, mode of goodness, an elephant, and a dog, seeing them as equal. So it's seeing all species as being equal, and others seeing the soul, seeing the Atman within each of these bodies, and seeing them equally, samadashinaha. So, but seeing people as being equal with animals. And of course, this is very much the basis of vegetarianism and of course, veganism. So seeing all the different species, the Atman within everybody, within every body and everybody. So this is one of the characteristics of one who's received this transcendental knowledge, by complete knowledge. And this leads one on the path of liberation. So, and then the text that we're studying, text 19, those whose minds are established in sameness and equanimity have already conquered the conditions of birth and death. They are flawless like Brahman, and they are already situated in Brahman. Ihaiva taira jita sago yesham samye sthitam manaha nidosham hi saman brahma tajmad brahmani te sthitaha. So this iha is in this life, here or here on earth, in this very world. Eva, certainly, indeed. Taihi, by them, by those. Jitaha, conquered, subdued or controlled. Sagaha, birth and death. Birth, coming forth, rebirth. So this is, this is liberation, right? So liberation means to become freed from this wheel of birth and death, the samsara, this perpetual cycle of birth and death, birth and death, birth and death, birth and death. The living entity, the spirit soul within this material world, the jiva, is described as being nityabada and nityabandha. Nityabandha is eternally conditioned, and nityabada is eternally within this material world. Always, rather, nitya is always. So this means that it's beginningless, can't be traced out. So through this process of karma yoga and receiving transcendental knowledge from the bona fide spiritual master, one can become liberated from this material misery of birth and death. And Krishna will describe this more in more verses in this sequence of texts. What's quite really wonderful about these verses that we're going to be studying over the coming weeks is the joy within. Krishna says in these things I'm talking about. That he's a yogi and he's happy in this world. One whose happiness is within, who is active within, who rejoices within, and is illumined within, is actually the perfect mystic. He is liberated in the Supreme, and ultimately he attains the Supreme. This is like, being atmarama, self-satisfied, self-realized. Like we're all seeking our happiness externally, generally speaking. It's the nature of the world, seeking happiness externally. But here, Krishna is talking about happiness within, through self-realization. At this point, Krishna hasn't really expounded upon the idea of devotional service. So here he's just speaking about the self-realization of appreciating that I'm spiritual in essence, that I am eternal. The nature of the soul is Sakchirananda. So Sat, eternality, Chit, knowledge, Ananda, blissfulness. So, the Ananda or the blissfulness, for the impersonalist or the voidist, this liberation or this Ananda is the freedom from suffering, right? This is like, I've given the analogy several times. When I was a boy, I had this, used to go to my uncle's farm and had riding boots, and a nail was coming up into my foot. And out of sort of like stupidity or typical male kind of thing, you don't want to admit you got a problem. You don't want to tell people you got a problem. So anyway, I put up with this stupid nail in my foot for a long time. And it even led to a plantar wart. It was kind of like so stupid. But, and of course I'm still stupid like that. But anyway, when I finally told my Auntie Betty, look, I've got this nail sticking up in my foot, And so anyway, she tells my Uncle Paddy, hey Paddy, he's got this nail sticking in his foot from his boot. So he grabs the boot, sticks it on this, like they had a farm. This was on a farm in the outback of, not really the outback, but in the country areas of New South Wales. So in New South Wales, there's Sydney on the coast, and there's a range of mountains called the Blue Mountains. And then out behind that, you go out to where there's fairly large farming going on, mainly sheep and cattle and wheat. Anyway, so my father's family had quite a large farm. And anyway, so they're on a farm, so they have this thing where they actually deal with nails sticking out into your foot. So he grabs the thing, sticks it on this thing. It's like a metal thing that you can just sort of slide the shoe over or the boot over, and then you gets a hammer and goes bang, bang. And that's it. Problem solved. Right? No longer have I got a nail sticking in my foot, So this was like liberation. It was like, Ananda, blissfulness, freedom from pain, like release. This is what, another meaning of the word mukti. It's like release. I'm released. Or nirvana. Nirvana is like the snuffing out. It's like snuffing out a candle. It's like snuffing out of this material condition. And it's like, what a relief. Right? But this is not the highest ananda or blissfulness. The highest ananda or blissfulness is engaging in a loving relationship with the Supreme Lord. How wonderful is that? So anyway, so here in this verse, Krishna is saying that here on this earth, rebirth is conquered. Who's it conquered by? It's conquered by those whose minds are established in sameness and equanimity, samye, in equanimity, in equality, in sameness, in equability, in impartiality, and in disinterestedness. So stitam, so situated, so established or situated or abiding in, remaining in some manaha, mind or thought. So, so rebirth is conquered by those whose minds are established in sameness and equanimity. So just like this Pandit who's able to see all living beings equally, whether they're animals or humans, whether they're brahmanas or dog eaters, whether they're cows or whether they're dogs, or plants or whatever for that matter. It's like seeing with equanimity. And of course this idea of equanimity and equal seeing, Krishna raised this right in the beginning of Bhagavad Gita with Arjuna, that one should be equal in happiness and distress. So another aspect of this equanimity, and Krishna describes this concept of sameness or equanimity in many verses throughout the Bhagavad Gita. So a person who is like this are flawless like Brahman, and thus they're already situated in Brahman. And so Bhaktivedanta Swami, in his purport, He says, the one who's elevated the stage of equanimity is no longer subject to take birth in the material world, but can enter into the spiritual sky after his death, so entering into the Brahman. So he goes on to describe the Lord is flawless because he is without attraction or hatred. Na sochati, na kankshati, so no attraction or hatred. Similarly, when a living entity is without attraction or hatred, he also becomes flawless and eligible to enter into the spiritual sky. Such persons are to be considered already liberated, and their symptoms are described below, in upcoming verses. So, we'll move on to text 20 next week. Thank you. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Haribo, Namaste, Krishna. So next week I'll speak a little more about Brahman, what this word Brahman means and different aspects of it. So anyway, Haribo.